Hello, everybody. Hi, this is Tony from Freedom at the Crossroads. And today, I've got something else to talk about for us women here. As you know, I'm a holistic fitness and health strategist where I talk about lifestyle, I talk about balance, I talk about self care, natural skin care, household items, personal development, things that we women really care about. Our skincare, our makeup, a life, work life balance, exercise, fitness, definitely self care. Well, today I'm going to talk about a topic, and actually it's more like a rant of mine because it's a personal mission of mine to empower women to change their fitness and health by taking ownership and taking back their lives and making the right choices for themselves without guilt, feeling better, looking better without the pressure. So, what am I talking about today? Today, I am giving you 5 reasons why self care is so hard for women. Yeah, we all know that, we need to take care of our health. We need to get enough sleep. We need to get enough rest. We need to eat well. We need to exercise. But why, whoa, why is it still so hard? And, I thought about this and I almost had like a little bit of a round table with some of my besties and just other women on Facebook. And we were discussing, a lot of other women are business owners, professionals, moms, which are also workers but not paid for that work. And I came to some pretty disturbing conclusions. It's not that I didn't have an idea of why it was so hard. I mean, if I didn't have an idea as to why it was so hard and why self-care is such a big issue for women, I wouldn't be a business owner now, would I? Well, what is the issue? What are the issues? Well, number 1 is conditioning. When you really look at it, in our society, and if you're like me, especially if you're from a more traditional society, you come from Africa, somewhere in the Middle East, where women's roles in society are really entrenched and very restrictive. This will resonate with you. Conditioning. And we, from the time we're little girls, we are conditioned to act a certain way, be a certain way, and to do certain things in order to fit into the norm. What society considers appropriate for women, and from a cultural standpoint, what our cultures, claim are, the right or appropriate roles for us as women. So in that context, there's very little room for self-care, personal identity. It's at a point where your identity and your role in society, they become blurred. And so that makes it very hard for women, especially women from traditional societies, to make that break so that they can have their appropriate mindset in order to attend to their self-care needs. So conditioning is huge. Next thing is shame. Society makes you feel like you're a failure, or there's something wrong with you, or you're selfish if you want to take a step back and recuperate, refill your cup. And I know this is huge for moms in particular, where you have all these obligations for your kids, for your husband, for running your household, and you get to the point where you have this pressure on you to perform. And if you stop and say, I can't do it, or I need to take some time out for me, you're made to feel, or pressured to feel, guilt and shame associated with that. And society tacitly reinforces that mindset. And that's why, I guess that's why we have such a huge boom now where everybody is talking about self-care and all of that. But you can't talk about self-care unless you talk about things like social cultural conditioning and the mindset of guilt. So that is huge. Mindset of guilt and mindset of shame. So those are three key elements of why it's so hard for women to do self-care for themselves and to actually conceptualize self-care. So we've got conditioning, we've got guilt, we've got shame. That's already a 3 points of nasty right there. And it's, you would think in this day and age, especially in 2018, that, women, we've gone a long way. But if you just listen to the politics of now, particularly here in the United States and over the world, women are rebelling. And, we're really rising up and making our voices heard because we are tired. We are tired of made to feel guilt and shame because we say enough is enough, or because we say, I need some time to nurture me. I need some time to refill my cup. So yes, is that a rant from me? Yes, it is. So those are 3 things I've given you as to why self-care is so hard for women. Another thing, superwoman complex. And the thing about all of these points that I'm hitting on is that they're all interconnected and they weave together into a toxic soup that entraps us in bondage until we shift the mindset, until we say enough is enough and say, you know what, I am worthy, I am a human being, I have needs, and I have wants, and I have desires, and I am entitled. It is my right as an individual to address those needs. And so, superwoman complex, I hate that term with a passion because that's all that's wrong. If you could have a term for all that's wrong with women and the barriers to their self-care, it would be superwoman complex, where you give too much, you do too much, and you don't refill your cup. And that's where you're giving of yourself until there's nothing left, and until you begin to identify your personal worth and identity with how much of yourself you are giving away, constantly giving away. And eventually, that cup, that well dries up because what? You're a human being, you have limitations. And so what ends up happening, you have no boundaries, or you've so eroded your boundaries in terms of, what is, what's your personal space and your sacred space versus what you allow other people to access, to the point that those lines become blurred. And so what happens? You're overstressed, you're overwhelmed, you're frustrated, you begin to get depressed because all of this pressure is clamping down on you and it's coming from all these different directions. And then on top of that, when some fitness guru or instructor says, hey, you gotta take some time and go exercise, the first thing a superwoman is gonna say, where's the time? I don't have the time. Yeah, why? Because of these reasons by society. And this is something that is entrenched. So even though we say, I sometimes marvel at how little has changed, compared to what women went through in the past. Yes, I know there have been a number of improvements in terms of women's roles and, what we're able to accomplish as women in the world, business, professionally, culturally, socially. But those underlying toxic strings, toxic mindsets still permeate our society today. And that's why we have all these issues that are coming up. That's part of the reason why we have the Me Too movement and all these other women's movements that are coming to the fore, because you have these issues underlying this whole dynamic. And so when I say, okay, when you say self-care, Superwoman says, where's the time? So that leads me into the next one where we say, okay, I don't have the time. Well, why don't you have the time? You don't have the time because you're busy being superwoman, conditioning, guilt, shame associated with setting aside, associated with distancing, associated with owning your own space and your sacredness of yourself. This is huge. And until you break that mindset, it all starts here. And that's why I always say, in order to really succeed at self-care, in order for women to get past these issues when it comes to self-care, so you've got to make the decision. You've got to get a plan and you've got to take action. And if you don't do any of this, you will be stuck in that well of, oh, I know I should do it, but I can't. And that's literally, and even in that statement, you are making a choice. Whether you accept it or not, you are making a choice to remain in that state. And that's why I said, okay, let's talk about why self-care is so hard for women. And then by recognizing and bringing that to the fore, I feel and I know that that will help women to say, have an aha moment and say, okay, I need to stop. I need to get off the crazy wheel, get off the hamster wheel going nowhere, and break the cycle. Because that's really what it is, a cycle of bondage, conditioning, guilt, restrictive social cultural roles and norms that have been put upon women for ages. And in order for you to claim ownership of your humanity and your individuality, you've got to make that decision, and it starts up here. So you need to make that mindset. Women need to make that mindset shift. And so the negative connotation of barriers. Barriers are not healthy. They are deterrents to growth, and they really impact you spiritually, mentally, and all levels. So barriers, bad. Boundaries, good, because that forces you, that makes you to say, okay, there are certain standards I must adhere to for my own health and well-being as a human being and as an individual, and that is sacred. And I allow conditional access to that space based on your relationship with various individuals or various things that are not negotiable. And that usually comes into play when you talk about the other issues I mentioned earlier, where I talked about conditioning, shame, guilt, the superwoman complex, that notion of no time. All of those overarching issues play into that whole dichotomy between barrier and boundaries. And so when you don't know the difference between that, again, mindset, that's where you have the problem. And then making the proper distinctions between your sacred space and the external, then you set yourself up to not receive that support. Because when you set aside your own sacred space and say, this is my time, this is me, I am claiming it, I'm taking ownership of it with my own power, I am entitled, it is mine, I own it personally, it is a place of power for me. When you don't do that, then you set yourself up for not having support. When you do set up the proper boundaries, when you do make the right distinctions, then you force other people or other things to step into their appropriate roles and spaces as well. In other words, say taking care of kids, okay, well, you need to make dinner, you need to help the kids with their homework. Well, there are other people in the household that need to step up to the plate and assume their roles as well. In other words, they need to step into their own space in order to. So that's just a few quick and dirty points I wanted to talk about. Please follow me on freedomatthecrossroads.com. I'm on Twitter, Tonya Taria Health, Taria Health on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me there talking more, blogging more about women, our issues, skincare, balance, lifestyle. Welcome to Freedom at the Crossroads. All right, people, till next time. Woohoo!